bringing you key insights, tips, and advice from the brightest minds in the Canadian franchise industry. This is the Franchise Canada Chats podcast. I'm Gary Prenovo, your host of the Franchise Canada Chats podcast, where we take you into the world of franchising. Season 7 of Franchise Canada Chats will feature interviews with franchisees, franchisors, and industry leaders sharing key insights and expert advice on navigating challenges on their path to success. Franchise Canada Chats is brought to you by FranNet, Canada's franchise matchmaking experts. At FranNet, we help you to build your optimum business model. Then we introduce you to well-suited franchise options. Then, most importantly, we coach you through all aspects of your research so that you can arrive at an informed and defensible yes or no decision.
Hello, everyone in Franchise Canada land. This is Gary Prenovo of FranNet and author of The Unstoppable Franchisee. It is my absolute pleasure today to welcome Steven Vanloffeld, who's an entrepreneur from the Saugeen First Nation in Ontario. His business is eSupply Canada. Quick bit of background about Steve. While serving as a bound counselor, he noticed how often the big box delivery trucks were coming and going, and he considered that the common items that were needed for everyday operations and wondered how he could redirect the spending to support the local businesses. And in so doing, he found a great opportunity to develop a distribution and supply chain for essential office, janitorial, and industrial products. Then he worked to establish relationships with wholesalers and manufacturers and set up a drop ship website. In 2019, Steven established eSupply Canada, redirecting the spending from multi-billion-dollar big box retailers and keeping those dollars invested locally. Steven, welcome to the show.
Gary, this is a real pleasure to be here. You did a great summary of really, I think, the opportunity that I saw and what eSupply is all about, and really looking forward to the opportunity to unpack, the eSupply franchise system and really my journey to where we are today.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. So tell us a little bit about your background and experience and how it led to this cool opportunity.
Well, geez, where do I begin? So as you mentioned, I'm from Saugeen First Nation, which for those in Ontario or those that know Canada generally, it's about 2.5 hours northwest of Toronto. It's on the southern shores of Lake Huron. Beautiful area, lot of development in our territory. And so I'm founder and CEO of eSupply Canada. And what we are is a national online distributor of office, janitorial, and industrial supplies. And what we're doing is we're really disrupting the business supplies industry. We're consolidating products and we're focusing on Indigenous community and local ownership. But my journey to becoming the founder and CEO of eSupply, it's an eclectic one. I left my community back in 2000 and I attended Humber College at the time. Took an advertising media sales program, and that kind of, I guess, gave me an early foray into the business world. I was selling advertising. I was running a magazine in Texas. The economy changed, when the war in Iraq broke out, and so the business switched. And so at that time, I went back to university, took a degree in political science, wound up as a summer student working for the federal government in health policy. From advertising to health policy, I lived in Ottawa for a number of years working in Indigenous health policy. And my house went to burn down at the time, and I actually found myself homeless for a while, living in the shelter system. And so, as you can see, becoming a founder and CEO of a supplies company wasn't really what I was looking at the time. I couldn't even see out of what I was currently facing at the time, which was homelessness. But use the support systems that were out there in terms of housing and community agencies. Went back to the master's, started a consulting company, went back to school, did a PhD, didn't complete it, but made it to all but dissertation, and found out that academic life really wasn't for me, because at this point, my business interest had been piqued. I was elected to council at my First Nation in 2016. And it was at that time when I was serving on council, one of my portfolios was nuclear, because we have the world's largest nuclear power plant within our territory. And there's a $20 billion refurbishment happening, right? I also looked at our government, our First Nation, and what our revenues and expenditures were and where that revenue was going. And because we had few businesses within our community, our revenue just left. It went to the surrounding towns and retailers, right? Our revenue was 32 million. Our expenditures were 27 million. We had a gas station. You can't spend 27, that can't sustain a community, right? So all that revenue left, I'd say upwards of 90%. And I said, we need to do something about what is termed economic leakage. What are we purchasing from outside of the community to operate, to keep operations going, that we can begin purchasing from ourselves? What are developers in our territory doing? What commitments have they made to us as an Indigenous community? What opportunities do they need? What supplies do they need? And so that really kind of got the thought process going around what would become eSupply. And so here we are today, office, janitorial, and industrial supplies. And so that was really what led me here.
And when did you start actually franchising, and how many franchisees do you have, Steven?
So we're about to close our first one, actually. Fingers crossed. I don't want to say it out loud. We're going back and forth on the legal agreement right now, but we're about to close our first one. So I conceived of the company in 2019 after listening to how I built this podcast. From that, wrote the business plan, started the company. We actually launched in February 16th, 2020. As you know, 3 weeks later, the world went to hell, everything shut down. And when you're selling business supplies, it's on the surface not a great place to be in. But what makes the eSupply model resilient and great is that we're dropship. We source over 1 million products by going direct to national wholesalers as well as manufacturers. So we only purchase items when our customers purchase items. So there's, we don't have the added risk that comes with purchasing inventory and holding on to that, nor do we have the added cost of capital by building warehouses. So that allowed us to go lean, right? And through our industrial supply chains, we actually had legitimate access to PPE, because when we're not in the midst of the pandemic, gloves, masks, goggles, all of that, those types of supplies are traditionally used on industrial sites. So we pivoted. We supported governments in helping them to procure supplies. We supported Ontarians. We supported Indigenous communities. And then when things started to open back up, that allowed us to pivot back and focus on our original mandate was, providing these business supplies, mainly to Indigenous communities, to major corporations that operate in Indigenous territories and are looking to have made commitments to supply chain diversity, to Indigenous procurement, and to economic reconciliation, and to the federal government. The federal government has made a 5% procurement commitment to Indigenous businesses, which will see an additional $1.1 billion in annual spending directed to Indigenous businesses once it's fully scaled. So that's where we turn back to and where we're going now.
So a number of questions come up. I want to come back in a couple of minutes to understand more about why the model works so well, Steven. But when I think about this model, and you've almost got your first franchisee, so we'll cross my fingers for you as well. Who are you looking for as your ideal franchisee? What are the qualities that you're looking for?
So we actually have two franchise models available. One is our Indigenous community ownership model. I identified this need when I was serving on council, working within Indigenous communities and seeing how much revenue was leaving our communities. That is a problem among many Indigenous communities across Canada. There are 634 First Nation communities, over 50,000 Indigenous businesses. A lot of them, that revenue leaves. And so they're looking for ways to address economic leakage. And so what our Indigenous community ownership model does is it provides communities with a vehicle to earn revenue simply by purchasing the supplies that they would through their own company, through the eSupply franchise, right? As I look at my community as kind of a base case, there's a line item in our audit that is called purchases for materials and supplies. That line item is $4.1 million. right? Our franchisees net back 10% of everything that they purchase. And so that's, through an eSupply franchise, that's $400,000 back to the community. And the question becomes, how can that money be reinvested back into programs, into entrepreneurship, and support community enhancement and development? So that's our Indigenous model. And to the best of my knowledge, nobody's doing that in Canada. So we're really creating that opportunity there. But as I pull together,
just clarifying question on that, the franchisee who's operating that model, are they doing sales and fulfillment? Like what are they doing?
So basically what we're doing is we're working them to transition the purchasing that they'd currently be directing towards the big box retailers, and then putting that through our system. We've actually partnered with Fanshawe College to develop a 4-day new owner training program. So what we do is we put them through the paces. They learn our system, account management, sales, overcoming objections. So they actually have those skills. And what they can also do is not only can they take care of their internal purchases, but now if they have agreements with developers within their territory, they can go out and be great account managers and look to create agreements with those developers. Keep in mind that you can't extract a resource within this country without coming into contact with some Indigenous communities' traditional territory. And the best way to actually extract those resources is by partnering and having benefits flow to those communities, right? There are some great long-term joint ventures that are happening, but now Indigenous communities also have a really easy vehicle to enhance impact benefit agreements or partnerships and say, yes, we want these multi-generational equity stakes within these developments. But there's also a really low-hanging fruit where we can begin seeing some investments from this partnership right now, and that's through your supply chain, hand tools, front office, you name it. We carry over 1 million supplies, so there's really nothing that we can't procure that these developers are using. So it allows them to address leakage and earn revenue and create partnerships with developers in their territory. Really great model. So,
cool. Okay, so the second model.
And the second model is actually open to all Canadians, right? I think what we've done is we pulled together the supply chains, we've proven the model, developed our partnership and our training program with Fanshawe College. And as everyone over the pandemic has started to work from home, and now there's a back to work order in a lot of places, people are saying, you know what, this is not, I don't want to go back to the same old. And they're looking for new opportunities, right? People are looking to value the time with their families and not work 80-hour weeks. Well, guess what? That's perfect for an eSupply franchise, right? You work from home, you never have to touch a product. You have to have a sales aptitude, because basically what you're doing is you're going out and you're selling to the small and medium enterprises within your territory. But, you're home at the end of the day. And we actually define our territories using Elections Canada electoral districts. Somebody else has gone out there and divided up the Canada based on any number of factors. But what we're able to do is look at take those territories that are already defined. We're able to go to Industry Canada and find exactly how many registered businesses there are with a minimum of 1 employee. And now we can come up with a minimum number of businesses. And so there's 364, if I recall, ridings. We've amalgamated some of those lower ones where it doesn't really make sense. But now we have 345 businesses, territories that can now be sold to people that want a great home-based business. And again, it's a great model. The barrier to entry is really great, or is really low. And because I come from an Indigenous community, I really wanted to make this opportunity as low barrier to entry as possible. Partner with a great academic institution, so that way, oftentimes there are gaps in education between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians. Didn't want that to be a barrier to great business success. And so we've really set up a model for supporting our Indigenous partners and our territory partners, giving them the tools they need to go out and be business partners to the people that they would be operating and selling to within their territories.
One of the things that's been a key driver for a lot of organizations is corporate social responsibility, and it sounds like you've built that directly into your model, the foundation of your model. One of the things we talked about in the before going live is how you help with marginalized communities. Tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, so 1% of our net profit actually goes to the eSupply Future Leader Scholarship Program. So because we run a dropship model, we're able to compete on price with the big box retailers, right? We're able to pass those cost savings on in order to be competitive. And simply by purchasing through eSupply, we've amalgamated these supplies, right, into one convenient dropship model. And you get to have a bigger impact simply by purchasing through us, because 1% of your spend actually goes into this pot of resources, which is given out to Indigenous students pursuing post-secondary education in business, law, economics, as well as the trades. So really business focused, but also high growth opportunities. And companies love that, right? Why go to the big box retailers that's looking to cut costs, right? And basically create shareholder value when they can have a bigger impact simply by purchasing through an Indigenous supplier, right? And so we give that opportunity. That's one of our value propositions. And so we make it easy. We sell supplies that you're purchasing on a daily, a weekly, monthly basis. We provide the supplies that you need to operate. We're not out there selling snake oil. We're providing everything that you need to operate. It's a really easy win for corporate Canada to support this.
So the franchisee, as you said a few minutes ago, Stephen, they have to have some sales aptitude. They've got to be willing to go out and build relationships and then nurture those relationships over time.
Yeah, that's key. I mean, and one of the challenges that they face is that you have to overcome the barrier of the long-standing relationships, right? These corporations have been with their suppliers for any number of years, right? So they have those long-standing relationships. But what we work with them to understand is we don't want the whole pie. We eventually want to get there, of course, but let's build up the relationship. Let's focus on low value acquisitions where you can just swipe the corporate credit card instead of having to go through formal procurement, right? Let's hold hands before we start running. And that's really what we focus on, right? Because we need to, people need to know us. They need to begin trusting us. We need to deliver. And then when the time opens up, when they go to tender for these RFPs and they're looking to bring on new suppliers, at that point, that's when we pounce.
So as coming, let's come back to, is there anything you'd like to add as to why the business model works so well? If we've got perspective on franchisees in the audience, what would you tell them in addition to what we've already shared?
So, online drop ship, carry over 1 million products. We go direct to the manufacturers. I mean, that's all key. Another great thing is that we're not actually asking our franchisees to purchase inventory up front. So again, we're de-risking the business. They're actually going through our supply chains, our corporate accounts with our suppliers. So we're the ones taking on the risk. I challenge you to go and find any system out there, start any business where it's not you personally taking on the risk or having to bankroll those cost of goods. That's us.
I just finished writing a book. I had to buy 1,500 books. I live that very
exactly. And that's it. I mean, a lot of folks, access to credit is a challenge, and we didn't want that to be out there. We're all about bringing an opportunity to all people, right? If you see the value in being able to cross-sell and upsell in the supplies that we provide, this is the business for you.
Let's talk about your journey in becoming a franchisor. And again, with when you think about as you answer, we've got people who want to franchise their business, people who have recently franchised their business. What were your big lessons in that journey? Like, talk about the advice you got and what are your big lessons?
Yeah, so it can be lonely, when you're beginning, and just as a business owner before you go down this path. I think there's a lot of great industry experts out there. The Canadian Franchise Association, does a great job in pulling those together, supporting systems, supporting consultants and industry experts in terms of creating this ecosystem of support for franchisees, for franchisors, and those considering to head down this path. So I did reach out to individuals. I reached out to a number of individuals around legal, around consulting, around helping to develop the franchise disclosure document, around the website, and helping to build brand awareness around the operations. So I spoke with everyone out there, right? I kind of found it was all the same. It was, we can help you get here. We can help you get here, 20, 30, $50,000. By the time I added everything up, I was looking at 200 grand if I went down that path. But I also run a consulting company, don't forget. I mentioned a bit of my education before. That's, doing all these things is actually what I do. So I said, what am I doing here? I'm better off keeping that capital, reinvesting it in sales reps and investing it in our system, and only using what is necessary to bring on experts if and when it's time. But what I did do is I reached out to BDC. They had provided some capital when I first started the company, and so they have an advisory arm over there. So I reached out to my rep at BDC and I said, do you have anybody on your roster that has a franchise background? And so they went through their list and they put me in touch with, somebody that not only had been a franchisee, almost a similar model as mine, but also then went and worked in leadership capacity with the franchisor and was responsible for franchise development across North America. So it just happened to be serendipitous that I was partnered with this guy. And so we worked through all of the aspects, everything that a franchisor needs to do. We spent 3 months kind of working through all that. I wrote a part of it. I brought on one of my consulting colleagues to help, who just loves research and writing. They wrote that part. We worked with legal. We worked with M&Ps, our auditors and our finance guys. So we worked with them. And so we managed to pull together at a fraction of the cost, what is everything that we would have done. And it gave me the chance, taking this path gave me the chance to be in it, right? I didn't outsource it to somebody else and they come back and maybe we do an interview once or twice and then I get a document at the end. I was in it. I was step by step working through it, meting through the issues, going back and forth with my consultants, writing it, rewriting it. And I think the experience that I got from that was just so much richer and so much more rewarding that I wouldn't have done another way. It took a lot longer and not everybody has that time, but that's the path I took.
Enjoying the episode so far? Franchise Canada also has bi-monthly newsletters full of franchise opportunities. With Franchise Canada e-news, new content gets sent directly to your inbox, and you can keep up to date on the newest episodes of the Franchise Canada Chats podcast that you're listening to right now. Plus, you get a free subscription to Franchise Canada magazine. Join the 19,000 fellow franchisees, industry leaders, and aspiring entrepreneurs by subscribing at franchisecanada.online. Now, back to the episode.
And in the process, sounds like you did the alpha test, beta tests, and refined, improved the business model so that now it's duplicatable at the franchisee level.
Absolutely. And that's where, when I was focusing, I just wanted this to be an Indigenous model. But then as we're going through it, it's like, wait a minute, this created a great model where we can go out and also create another great opportunity for those that are looking for a home-based business, newcomers, people that, maybe mothers or people that are looking for a second career, right? And have a sales aptitude and really get the value in what it is that we're providing. So that opened up as well.
Okay. So as you on your journey to become a franchisor, the message for prospective franchisors, people who are thinking about it, be prepared to, and if you don't have the expertise, you were fortunate that you did, but be prepared to invest in the expertise that's out there. CFA is one source. So I've often, I help companies become franchisors for over 5 years, and a low budget was 50,000. That in some cases that was a lot absorbed by legal, but it's one thing to create the franchise system. Now after that, now you've got to promote it and market it and get the franchisees. Yeah. So it is, you mentioned $200,000. That's a good budget to have. It might be self-funded partially from some of your early franchise sales, but you've got to be prepared to have deep pockets to get it going and patience.
Absolutely. And you know what? And that's the challenge, because I mean, how many folks that are growing and scaling a business just have a pot of 200,000 taken away from their operating budget, right? So, and you want to have the system ready where you're confident. You don't want to be building it as you go and piecing it together. You want to be confident that, you know what, we're ready to go, and I can go out there and position this to people, because they're the ones that are investing in you and your system, right? So you want to have that system ready to go to support them.
Well, and on the support, it's very interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the challenges early franchisors have is, especially if they've been running the business as a regular business and then they decide to franchise it, is the customer base changes. Their old customers are now the franchisees' customers. Their new customers are the franchisees. Yeah. And making that transition. Sounds like you've done some really good things, partnering with Franchise College and other elements to get some of that support there. But now you're going to be learning how to support them and help them grow their businesses as well. What advice would you give, Steven, to other individuals, either diverse groups or these are considering franchising their businesses? Any additional advice to those who are thinking about franchising their business, not the want to buy a franchise? I'll get to that next.
Sure. I'd say, I mean, bottom line, take the time, right? Do it right. Speak with folks like I did. Speak with a lot of individuals, put out requests for proposals, let people bid on it, see what's coming in. I mean, do your due diligence. Right. There's a lot of great folks out there, and you want to have these chats because you want to find out, maybe you can't have the entire team that you want to, but who carries a lot of the skills that can help you get a good majority of the way. Right. And you're also going to be working with them for several months. So you want to have a good rapport, that they get your vision and they can put it down on paper, or they can help you package it in such a way that other people will be able to get the benefits and the value proposition of it as well, right? And they're saying, aha, I like that model. Absolutely.
So the building of the operations manual and other critical things that the franchisee is going to execute from.
Absolutely. And you know what? You need to really find your value proposition. Like this is an industry of over 1,300 different systems. How are you going to stand out from that? Right? What is it that you're going to do? Are you just going to, go into the ether with the other 1,300, or who are you going to target? How are you going to get there? What channels are you going to use to reach them? Are there diverse newspapers that you're going to advertise in? Are you going to use PR in order to get your story out there? Because I've spoke with some people, some well-established brands, and I said, I'm considering spending money on formal advertising. Has that worked for you? And they said, largely no. Where we've seen a significant bump in the number of people wanting to engage with us has been through PR. Our ability to tell our story is really what sets that apart. So you need to be able to package in a cohesive way all the benefits of your franchise system and why somebody should choose you.
Yeah, and for clarity for the audience, when Steven refers to 1,300 systems, that's how many franchisors there are. And so if you're going to franchise your business, you are competing for the investment dollar of the prospective franchisee and their talent. It's not just I'm competing against other brands in my category. It's typical today, folks, that prospective franchisees are looking at between 5 and 8 systems generally before they start narrowing it down. Another interesting fact that we get from marketing data is it takes 12 times on average for the prospective franchisee to touch your brand through website, through store experiences or anything before they reach out and even start talking to you. So what Steven refers to here is PR, a very important part of the combination, but you want to, I think what you're saying, Steven, you want to understand the total path to the prospective franchisee and what we talked about being patient as well. Okay, so for the prospective franchisee, somebody who's looking at becoming a franchisee for the first time, any different advice you'd give to them?
It's somewhat similar, but still take your time. I mean, you're talking about these different touch points, right? Those are opportunities for a prospective franchisee to use to elicit more information from the franchisor, right? Be prepared with your questions. Bring in your partner, bring in your kids, find out what it's actually about. Speak with other franchisees. Understand their values, right? I think that's important. The communities that I come from, the community I come from, a lot of our folks are marginalized, and so is there a system out there that maybe gets your background and the owner that started the company has a similar background? Right. Because if you're just going to go into a corporate world where you need to be liquid to the tune of $1 million or $2 million, well, guess what? That likely isn't going to facilitate your success, right? And you're likely not going to get into there. So you need to match those opportunities with your background and at the end of the day, who you are and the system you want to represent. So in as much as you can, talk with as many people, look at as many systems, kick the tires, speak with people, go out to those shows. Go to the franchise shows, have a chat with them. People want to speak to you. These are often free opportunities. So go and have fun. It's a great day. Participated in my first one in January. It was a crazy event, a lot of people. I don't think I sat down, but we got to speak with a lot of people. Right. And a lot of people were genuinely interested in franchising in general and the next path that they wanted to be on. So get out there and do the homework.
You mentioned something really, really important, which is alignment of purpose. In my book, when I interviewed top franchisees, every single top franchisees, and these are people, the top 1% to 4% of their franchise systems, they are making an incredible amount of money, but also have an incredibly strong balance in their lives. Every one of them could define crystal clear how their personal purpose was being served both in and by their business. So I'll give you an example. You talk about marginalized people. One of my interviewees had 81 salons, and she said, Gary, I don't buy more stores to make more money. I buy more stores because 96% of my 800 staff are single moms who need a break. That's alignment of purpose. That's just one example. So the importance of purpose, what's the individual's why? Why do they want it? Make the change, and more importantly, why do they want what the change is going to give them? So, our counsel to prospective franchisees at FranNet is know yourself first. What are the critical skills? Because you talk about sales skills. Somebody might love the logistics business and the supply chain business, but if they don't have any sales skills, they're not going to be a good fit for you, are they? So what are the core drivers that drive success in the business? What do they bring to the table? What are their gaps, and how does the franchisor bring those gaps? That's why it takes 2 to 3 months of really investigating their options.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sorry, I'm just going to say it's gut check time at that point, because you're investing in a system. It's there, but before you head down that path, you need to have a really good understanding of who you are, what your strengths are, and maybe even if you have some deficiencies in some aspect, can the system help you get there? Right. So it really is inward looking before you start going out and looking at what's actually out there.
And it's onto that point. One of the things I've said many times is not the franchisor's job to bring the franchisee customers. A lot of people are surprised by that when they start looking at franchise opportunities. It is the franchisor's job to bring systems, processes, and support, part of which is how to get customers, but the franchisee has to do the marketing, has to execute and do the work it takes. So it's really important for people to understand what that is and how well can they do it and how long it's going to take to get to break even. Those are all parts of the research side of things, right? As we kind of wind down the discussion today, Steven, what's next for you and your business?
Geez, where do I begin? What's next? Well, so we already do the office, the janitorial, the industrial, over 1 million products. But our goal is to go even bigger. So I've brought on, just signed an agreement with a new national computer and technology supplier. So we'll be able to offer that. We already did, but not to the degree that we'll be able to offer now. Just signed an agreement with Vistaprint. So we'll begin offering all of their complete catalog. So as you can see, we are now a complete one-stop shop business supplier across office, janitorial, industrial, computer, tech, and now the business and the marketing components that they offer as well. So no need to go out to 5, 6, 7 different places. You can get it all from eSupply, which from a franchisee perspective, that's a great opportunity to go out there and sell and provide value to the people within your territory. Yeah, we're continuing upgrading our tech. We're always working on that to ensure a best-in-class operation. We compete with the big box guys, so we still need to reinvest in tech because we don't want to lose them because our user experience is subpar. We're recruiting for our paid training and transition programs. We've actually got this program where if you don't necessarily have the access to capital, right, and we talked about supporting folks from marginalized communities. If you don't necessarily have the capital, but we think there's a great fit and a great potential for you, we'll actually put you in a 6-month paid training position where you're out there, you're learning the program, you're learning the systems, you're operating just as a franchisee would. You're actually building your book of business. Come month 6, you transition into, a fully operational territory that you've had 6 months in order to develop. So that's important. I think that sets us, apart from a lot of the systems that are out there.
That is unusual. It's kind of a try before you buy. Is at the end of that 6 months, do they have to pay the $25,000 or do you fund that some other way?
We'll fund it over the course of their agreement. But again, we want to bring opportunity for those that necessarily may not have always had. We want to work with, hey, if you can cover the franchise fee, we'll work with you too, of course. But we also want to remove as many barriers as possible for all people out there.
Yeah, for people 40 and under, the Futurepreneur program, which is a partner between BDC and Futurepreneur, there's $60,000 line of credit. Yep. For unsecured. So that would be a great solution for some people.
And when we partner, we partner with them, we refer people over there to go through the business development process and access capital that way. I've also brought on some respectable grant funding to help fill out our support roles. Just brought on a PR agency to help to tell our story, a creative agency. We're going to be developing a couple of years worth of creative there. Working on pitch competitions. I've actually developed we're working on a policy brief series looking at the economic contributions of franchising to Indigenous economies. So in addition to that, we've got a couple of papers coming out over there looking at the one paper actually shows that if franchising within Indigenous communities kept on pace with the non-Indigenous communities, there'd be an additional $1.5 billion back to Indigenous economies. And based on the population projections, an additional $4.5 billion going to Indigenous economies if participation rates increased. We also got another one looking at the number of job creation, which shows an additional 74,000 jobs created within Indigenous communities through franchising. And we're also submitting those papers to conferences to help raise awareness, attending trade shows, and of course, looking to secure a seed round of funding from either angels, private equity, or venture capital. So it's full steam ahead for eSupply Canada. We've only just begun.
It's such an exciting story. One of my favorite questions I asked every one of my interviewees in my book, what haven't I asked you that you would ask you?
Well, that's a good question. Why did I choose franchising as the vehicle to scale? Okay. Right. I think that's an important question. And I reflect back on my time on council. Right, I saw revenue leaving my community. Right. I saw the stores where that revenue was going to treating our people differently for no other reason than they were Indigenous, being asked to leave bags over at the front desk. Nobody else was being asked that. Right. And I said, we've got a $32 million club here that we need to start using. How can we begin drawing this revenue back as a way to hold these businesses to account? And so as I looked at those issues, as I looked at development within the territory, it was really a community issue that I was looking to address. And so I could have gone out and just hired a bunch of regional and corporate reps to go out and stop selling. But I said, if this is an issue within my community, this is an issue within many Indigenous communities. And so how can we use our systems, the model that we've chosen, to actually give Indigenous communities a vehicle to address leakage themselves and easily partner with developers within their territory, right? We reduce the risk, we reduce the cost to enter, the barrier, and we create a great business that way. And so it was a no-brainer that I had to give it back vis-a-vis a franchise system. And so that's really why I chose the model that I did, and why we're focused on bringing this to Indigenous communities. Because guess what? Nobody else is out there doing that. I guarantee you, maybe after this, some other folks will start thinking about that. But annually, the Indigenous economy is $53 billion a year. So it's
across those 634 communities that you mentioned. So that the diversity, the ability of the franchise business model to scale through the interdependent relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee. With what you just said, nobody else is serving it. I would imagine the vast majority of these communities are absolutely going to embrace this model. So it's a matter of getting the right people on board in a progressive way.
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
Going to be a very popular business model.
Yeah, but we're also creating, I think, a new paradigm. A lot of Indigenous communities haven't really, I think, looked at the full breadth of franchising. They want the big brands, the Tim Hortons and the what have yous. But what I've been promoting as I've been out there is say we need to actually look at what are you as a government, as a First Nation consuming and using in order to keep your operations on? What do your community members and citizens need? Where are they getting that from? Let's look at the industries within our territory. What do they need? What are they consuming? What services do they need? Now, once we have that perspective, once we're crystal clear about that, what that is, let's turn to franchising as a path to economic development, because there's over 1,300 different systems, right? And now that becomes a model to what is out there. So that's what I'm really promoting, and that's why I've also brought out those policy series.
And this is where I would anticipate the membership in the Canadian Franchise Association. You're being able to connect with the other franchisor leaders. There's going to be many of those that you and your franchisees are going to be identifying over time. You, Mr. or Ms. Franchisor, are a valid and necessary member of our future community. So let's talk about how we can partner together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, very exciting. I have many more questions that come to mind, and I know a bunch are going to jump at me as soon as we wind things down. How do people get in touch with you?
So info at eSupplyCanada.ca. Reach out to us. We also have eSupplyCanadaFranchise.ca. That's our franchise site. And then you can go on our regular website, eSupplyCanada.ca. So info at eSupplyCanada.ca, as well as our franchise vehicle, or go on our socials. So you can reach out to us there.
And on the CFA directory as well.
Absolutely. We are with one of the 1,300 members, plus members within the CFA. You can find us in there.
eSupply is very well branded. It's very, very easy to remember. Well, so in wrapping up, thank you very much for your time today, Steven. I look forward to staying in touch with you. And if you have questions around franchise development, consider me a resource.
You bet. Really appreciate the opportunity, Gary. Great seeing you, and CFA. Great job on this speaker series.
Thanks for listening to Franchise Canada Chats. Catch up on every episode of Franchise Canada Chats on SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your audio media. For more franchising resources, including how-to articles, expert advice, franchise success stories, and franchise opportunities, visit franchisecanada.online. Don't forget to subscribe to Franchise Canada e-News while you're there. You can also learn more about franchising at cfa.ca and connect with specific franchise opportunities at lookforafranchise.ca.